NFL players that broke the rules. All throughout the history of the NFL, there have been many instances of NFL players breaking the rules, sometimes on purpose and sometimes through sheer bad luck. Here are 7 NFL players who broke the rules. Number 7, Chad Johnson, $1 prank. The NFL has some strict policies, which don't always give players the benefit of the doubt. Chad Johnson was a victim of the NFL's cutthroat rules and policies on a number of occasions. Even though the star has earned millions of dollars playing in the NFL, he has had to pay a number of fines due to breaching rules he probably wasn't even aware of. Some of these instances include banned celebrations and even tweets. But one of the most unfortunate errors of judgment Chad made was in 2009, when he offered a referee $1 bribe as a joke. According to the NFL, there's no room for threatening or insulting language towards game officials, and the rules prohibit the possession or use of objects that have nothing to do with the game or football. Regardless of the fact that everyone, including the referee, knew that it was a harmless joke, the NFL took a stand and fined Chad for $20,000. Chad came out and tried to clear the air by telling everyone that he was just being himself and that he would never actually do something like bribe an official. That too in front of thousands of viewers and cameras, but many people, including Chad's coach, said that he crossed the line by tampering with the integrity of the league, and that he had to face the consequences that came with it. A bit harsh, but it doesn't come close to the next ranking on this list. Number 6, Nate Burleson's celebration. The NFL is pretty strict when it comes to celebrations or what the players are wearing when on the pitch. They have their deals with existing companies, and if any player wears a shirt or hat that represents another brand, it comes in a conflict of interest for the league. During a regular warm-up season, Nate was spotted wearing a shirt underneath his jersey which read the words, "What up, though?" He was already looking at a fine there for breaking the rules, but what made it worse was his celebration after a touchdown. Nate kicked the ball up in the stand and it was seen as excessive by the league, who fined him for $15,000. Nate was quick to accept the responsibility and apologized to many members of his team and the staff for his actions. He explained that none of what he did was planned and that it was more of an in-the-moment thing. Number 5, Odell Beckham Jr.'s sticky gloves. Back in November 2014, Odell Beckham Jr.'s Giants took on the Cowboys, and the game produced what people then believed was one of the greatest catches in games of history. Odell was running after a long ball tossed his way, which certainly looked uncatchable, but in a stunning display, Odell leapt through the air, evading a defender, and caught the ball with just 2 fingers. People began praising Odell's incredible catching ability, but many others were quick to suggest that such a catch would have never been possible without the gloves he wore. And to their credit, it was actually true. A study concluded by the MIT Sports Lab suggested that the gloves were 20% more sticky than the human hand. A lot of players came out afterwards saying that the gloves definitely played a huge hand in allowing players to catch the ball one-handed, and that whatever you may think of it, it did give the players an advantage on the pitch. Even the NFL's chairman, Rich McKay, spoke about the gloves, saying that even though he had no statistical data to support the arguments, but even he couldn't deny the fact that the gloves did make a difference. That wasn't the only time Odell was part of broken rules in the NFL. Number 4, Odell Beckham Jr.'s watch. After being traded from the Giants to the Cleveland Browns, Odell was set to make his debut with his new team. Odell came onto the field wearing a watch which did not match his new uniform, but people really started asking questions when he came on to play and was still wearing the watch. While it was never revealed how much Odell was fined, or even if he was, the NFL does have a track record of fining players a lot more for a lot less. Odell actually achieved 2 milestones when he wore that watch on the field. First, Odell became the first NFL player to wear a watch while playing, and this particular watch was a Richard Mille that cost over $350,000. So he also became the first person to wear something that expensive on the football field during a game. To be fair to Odell, he took a lot of heat after the game and spoke up about his critics, who would have latched onto anything, whether it was his watch or the way he tied his shoes. But Odell had learned his lesson, which is why in week 2, he came out to warm up wearing another Richard Mille watch, which a lot of people hadn't even seen. Richard Mille's website later confirmed that only 10 of these watches had ever been made, which probably put its price way higher than the watch he'd worn a week earlier. Thankfully, he left this watch back inside before the game began. Number 3, Antonio Brown's helmet woes. In 2018, the NFL decided to change the style of the helmets used to keep the players safer and to avoid any possible chances of concussions. It seemed to be a smart step which would produce a safer playing environment, but not everyone agreed with the new rules, notably Antonio Brown. Antonio was arguably one of the best receivers in the game, and after hearing the news, he said that there was no way he would be using anything other than the old-style helmets. his only excuse being that the new helmets impaired his vision enough for it to be a disadvantage for him. While the other NFL players had no real issues following these new rules, Antonio went around trying to find a helmet that could be useful for him and adhere to the NFL's new guidelines. He went as far as tweeting out that he was looking for a Shut Air Advantage adult large helmet that was manufactured in 2010 or after that. In return, he promised anyone who could get him his desired helmet a signed practice-worn Raiders helmet. As the whole ordeal escalated, the Raiders released him and he joined the Patriots on a one-year deal. Brown had missed many practice sessions as well, and whenever he did show up, there was something wrong with his gear, so for the time being, it was best for the Raiders to terminate his contract. But even after his move to the Patriots, Brown's woes were far from over. The NFL has strict guidelines for players to talk to the media. They gave players enough leeway so that they could avoid personal questions, but it was necessary for them to at least show up. While Brown was fined yet again for not speaking to the media, it was nothing compared to the last player on our list. Number 2, Marshawn Lynch and the media. Marshawn Lynch has always been one to shy away from the cameras and not be too willing to address the media's questions after games or before them, but NFL rules clearly state that players must show up and take questions from the media. Marshawn's unwillingness already had him fined twice for $50,000 each time, so he decided to make the effort. It inspired some of his hilarious generic interviews where he can be seen putting in the least amount of effort answering questions, often replying with "yeah" to every question he got asked. But it doesn't compare to one of his viral interviews where he just repeats the words, "I'm here so I won't get fined," over and over again to reporters. He was pretty angry with the league over their disappointment in his subpar interviews, but according to Marshawn, that didn't concern him. He was a football player first and foremost, and he clearly told everyone that his job was to show up at the interviews, which is what he did technically. So maybe the NFL will come up with another rule that could penalize him later, but for now, he seems to be in the clear. Number 1, Randy Moss moons the crowd. During a 2005 playoff match between the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings, Randy Moss caught an impressive touchdown from over 30 yards, which put his team up 30-17 late in the fourth quarter. What followed was an interesting celebration where Randy turned his behind to the crowd and pretended to take his pants off. The NFL doesn't look too kindly at unique celebrations, so naturally, Randy was fined $10,000 for his celebration. Pulling a stunt like that was quite funny in the moment, but for some reason the NFL does not allow such celebrations, even though there isn't really a set rule on what kinds of celebrations you can or cannot do. Regardless of that, the NFL did deem this particular one to be a little over the top. Randy was actually asked the question of that day a couple of years ago by a reporter, and he responded by saying that he had no idea it would attract such negative attention. But if he could do it all over again, he would probably not skip out on mooning the away fans. Good on you, Randy. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. See you in the next one.